Oakley dokley. I've never done this before, so I'm going to be trying this out for the first time because, and it's YouTube exclusive because, of course, there's imagery. But I figured I would create a dedicated episode for this topic because it keeps coming up, despite numerous people I've seen on YouTube that have tried to cover it, and for whatever reason, they struggle in getting people to kind of understand what's going on. And I'm going to take a stab at this. I may fail. It's probable I might fail. But I figured I'd take a stab at it because it is kind of this pervasive thing, and I'm not sure where or why, but I'll take a stab at it. And that's, of course, you if you're on social media, you've seen the SHIB accounts, both official and unofficial, talking about burns and shibburn.com, and there's millions of burns, millions of tokens being burned, and yet the price is going down, or it's not going up the way you expect. There's a reason for this, and that's what I'm going to try to do to kind of impart to you why this is happening, because it seems like people don't get it. And I'll do my best to try to break it down because it actually is very simple, but it starts with fundamentals. It starts at the beginning. First of all, you got to realize what's happened, and there's a story behind what's happening. The reason that this isn't going up is because of the very fundamentals of the token itself. I'm going to try to break that down best I can, but also some past incidents that have caused, I think, the price to get to a point where it's not able to move because of this issue around burns and why the burns even became a topic. Volume plays a factor in it. I'm going to talk about that as much as I can. I'll do the best I can. I'm not perfect. I'm only human, flesh and blood, a man, human league. I think that's 1983. First of all, understand the burns that are happening, and there are burns happening. They are confirmed burns. They are transactional burns. If you're coming from tokens that have tokenomics that do auto burns, meaning they burn every time somebody buys or sells or any of this, or buyback liquidity and all these things you heard of from the newer tokens. And when I say newer, I'm talking tokens that would have been around late 2020, sometime in 2021-ish. You started seeing reflections and all these mechanics. These are not tokenomics that are attributable to SHIB. SHIB never had them. SHIB is as basic as it got because they spun it up at a time when prior you had Doge coin, and Doge is as basic as it got. And they decided to create a token that just didn't have the inflationary aspect that Doge does. Doge can increase its supply, and it does on a current basis. And Doge benefited from the Elon tweet, the garbage Elon tweet from way back in the day. And Elon has largely supported Doge start to finish and doesn't really support any other dog coins. SHIB felt like they could create this token and they could beat Doge at its own game by simply not being inflationary. The problem, as I've said, there is supply, number one, but also the community plays a piece, saturation plays a piece. There's a lot of factors that are playing into why this is an issue and why the burn became a thing in the first place. Understand that SHIB started with the people, and predominantly Reddit, but you also had Discord and to a lesser degree Telescam. But fortunately to SHIB, Telescam didn't play that big of a deal of a factor for SHIB. It mostly is going to be the Reddit community. I would argue the Reddit community took this dude to levels, unbelievable levels, to its original all-time high. The original all-time high, we've touched that original all-time high on two occasions. One when it first launched, and it was the normal pump that happens every single time. It dipped back down. Then, very recently, it was getting very high after it launched on Coinbase Pro, and we started seeing some more volume coming in, and it got to that all-time high and surpassed it. I'm going to talk about the surpassing here very shortly. After this pump starts happening, all these whales start showing up, right? And the whales buy into the project. And when the whales buy into the project, of course, they are spending boatloads of cash on this thing. This helps spike the price. It exceeds its all-time high. You see that there's this strong momentum, and people keep now talking. This is hype. People keep talking about it's going to hit a penny, deep, deep, deep. There's all this stuff that's happening. A lot of it is, I don't want to say FUD because it wasn't that it's not true. You couldn't prove it. Rather that it's unreasonable levels of hype. I'm going to talk about why it's unreasonable when I get to CoinMarketCap, because CoinMarketCap got in the picture and they said, well, wait a minute here, folks. We got to slow this down a little bit because your circulating supply that you told us isn't right. And we did some analysis and looks like you got 200 trillion tokens that you didn't account for. If you know about how inflation works with the fiat, you understand that when you add more money into the world of circulation, it creates an inflationary situation. And when you're dealing with cryptocurrency, the amount of supply, circulating supply, is directly correlated to the price that it's going to be. The more tokens you have in circulation, the worse it actually gets. Remember, SHIB started with a very high inventory. Many people don't realize how high that inventory really was. That plays a factor in why the burns are kind of a waste of time. It's not that they're not going to eventually do something, but we need to quantify eventually. So you're asking me, how come we're burning and burning and burning and the supply isn't going down? It's simply because there are just too many freaking tokens out there. And all we see are, yep, a million burn and this burn over here. We're going to break that down for you. We're going to help you because we think we have a solution, but it's really going to take whether you guys want the smoke as to whether it's something you're going to do to kind of support it. And you're going to have to rally the troops. And we don't know that you really will or won't. We're not going to say you can or can't. We're not here to make a decision. We're here to give our stance and our opinion as somebody who does hold some SHIB, as somebody who has done this themselves. And now we're putting out a rallying call to the rest of the SHIB army to see if you want that smoke. Because here's the truth. With the supply we've got right now, that's still remaining in circulation, you'd have to burn 1 trillion tokens a day in order to get any significant movement. And I'm going to put out the prediction. They're the devs, when I say they, are likely not going to do it. We'll tell you why here shortly. Understand the numbers here. SHIB, when it started, when it was built, when it was created, had a quadrillion tokens. You can read off that slide what that means in terms of the numbers of tokens, but that's a lot of inventory. And of that, you still have half of it in circulation. If you remember certain tokens, they'll have like 1 trillion or 2 trillion or 10 trillion, nowhere close to this level. And then there are other ones that have like sextillions and quadrillions. And those ones that have sextillions and quadrillions, notice how many zeros they have in their price point. Notice that you can drop $20 and get like quintillions worth of tokens and they're worth nothing. And they never give you any sort of value in the short term because that inventory takes a long time. You're making the assumption when you create that type of inventory that a bunch of people are interested in your project. Chances are you're going to have a very difficult time drumming up that much interest, especially now because there's so many scams and people are less likely to buy into those tokens that have an excessive inventory. Now, SHIB was fortunate because of getting on so many exchanges. You can buy it almost anywhere now. So at least from an exposure, it's able to attract some attention. And trust me, Coinbase and all these other ones did everything they could to try to get people interested in buying SHIB because they know what I know, which is that there's just too many freaking tokens. There's too many freaking tokens out there. And in order to deal with it, we got to get people to either buy or you have to do excessive burns. I'll get to that in a second. But it's important you understand when you started with a quadrillion, and then the only reason you're down to 500 trillion is because that idiot Vitalik got sent the 500 trillion and then he, quote, burned them. That's the only reason it got this far. If Vitalik hadn't been involved, this thing would have been nowhere near its current price. You got lucky because he's already said he doesn't like the dog tokens and he just happened to burn them when the truth is you can't bank on that. You can't bank on it happening again. And no matter how much interest you try to drum up on social media, you still have a lot of inventory that you're going to have to deal with in order to get that price to move. Suppose you were to burn 1 million SHIB, and if you've looked on social media, you notice this pattern, right? It's like, we just burned 1 million SHIB, deep, 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 and all this. Let's put it in perspective here. You can read the slide, but ultimately, if you were to burn 1 million SHIB, and that sounds like a lot, right? But you're dealing with 500 trillion. I want to repeat what I said here. If you're dealing with 500 trillion tokens, just 1 trillion is 1,000 billions. So in order to do this, if you did 1 million SHIB a day, just 1 million, that's roughly the number on average, you take 1,000 days just to do 1 billion. There's 365 days in a year. That means under 3 years later, you'd have burned just 1 billion. However, if you look at my number off to the right there, I want to help you out. If I just took care of 1 billion, and that took me 3 years, you still got 499,999 billion left to deal with. I'm not going to bore you like Tevin Campbell. I don't want to bore you with it. But you can do the math on what that means and how long it would freaking take to get rid of the rest of the excess inventory. That's what we're talking about. Now, in traditional burns, you're assuming you can do kind of the incremental burns, plus you've got steady volume purchase. I'm talking new people. I'm talking people that are adding bags. It is true that SHIB is adding bags. It is true that people are buying, but the problem is the burn is not sufficient based on the amount of buys that are happening, because the number of buys happening has slowed down dramatically from the days when the whales were aping in. You do still have whales dumping into the project. The problem is the coin market supply, coin market cap changing to add 200 trillion. Number one, it harms sentiment. Number two, it added more that you have to kind of chew through. What we think, burn 1 trillion a day for just 1 year. You don't have to keep doing it on a regular basis. That's dangerous. Just for 1 year, commit to burning 1 trillion tokens every day for a year. It sounds like a lot, but it really is a small number, because you're still going to take a full year just to get through 370 trillion of the SHIB. Then you're going to have people doing regular buys. Each of the buys have some burn to them. You have the transactional burns. And so we believe that gets you to around 370 trillion SHIB total taken out of circulation within a year. What that would do for us as SHIB Army is it would get the price back to what CoinMarketCap reported it prior to this issue of the circulating supply. Now your price is going to jump, because remember, when CoinMarketCap had the older price that was down 300 some odd trillion, you were way up above all-time high, en route to dropping another zero. Now, I say this, and I know what you're thinking. Well, why don't you do it? Because here's the truth. I think it's not about the devs in this. I think it's about the SHIB Army. I think it's about the community. I think the community has failed itself because it's not a true community. And you're like, what? Let me explain what I mean here. Because if I'm right, and I challenge anybody and everybody, I want to smoke. I challenge you to take my numbers and take what I tell you here next and run it through its paces and verify or validate that what I'm saying is crap. If it's crap, come back at me. I want to smoke, and tell me why, respectfully, mind you, because if you're disrespectful, I'm not going to acknowledge you. But if you're respectful with it, you break down the math and tell me why it doesn't work or why it can't work, especially if you're in the business and you understand the code and the technology. I want that. Bring it, because I believe it's possible. So if somebody has contradictory data and they come respectfully, I want that smoke, because I believe that the community has always been the key to getting this thing to move. Here's your options from what I see it. Number one, straight up tell the devs, burn 1 trillion a day. Here's what frustrates me, at least, is when they announced Shibarium, that's what we assumed was going to be inevitable, that they were going to have SHIB be that token that was going to be part of the burn, because it's going to be the gas token, because it's the one that has the greatest supply in the entire ecosystem, because that's what they talked about doing way back in 2021. For whatever reason, they changed their mind and then decided to do it to Bone. I understand, but they had never marketed Bone to a heavy degree. Bone was always going to be a DAO-based token. It was never discussed that it would be the gas-based token. And frankly, I don't know why that makes any sense, because if you look at every other gas-based token, almost all of them are inflationary, meaning that they can mint new tokens because gas is necessary for all the transactions that happen. And especially if you look at now, and you look at Matic, and you look at Avalanche and all the other ones, if you look at the pair-for-pair equivalent, it would seem to make better sense to have it be SHIB so that you could burn down the supply, create its own constraint, and make it deflationary as part of transactional burns when Shibarium goes live. They chose not to do that. So then the other option would have been for them to commit to, yes, we're going to burn 1 trillion a day, not this penny ante 1 million or 10 million or 50 million. That's not going to make a dent for the next 700 some odd years plus. I guarantee they're not going to burn 1 trillion a day. The reason that they're likely not going to do it, from my perspective, in my opinion, is because to do so takes them out of circulation and creates a barrier for new people to buy into the project. And they're still banking on more people worldwide getting into crypto and buying into SHIB. I think they're correct, but I think that that's short-sighted, because if you look at something like a Urine Finance has a heavily constrained inventory. It's in the $20-something thousand per. People are still buying it. It didn't really hurt anything. It just means that the price for you to do so is a lot higher. It didn't mean that they stopped, because you can still buy, portions of a crypto. You don't have to have just one coin. So I don't think it stops anything. I think what it does is it creates that sentiment push that everybody's been expecting. Everybody's been expecting SHIB to go up because of the utility, because of the awareness, because of the mainstream that it hit, and it hasn't done that. And that's, I think, harmed investor sentiment. That's why you had like 5,000 holders completely dump out of the project, because they don't see it moving up anymore. However, option two seemed to make sense to me, which is that the community has the option and opportunity to step up and say, look, let's rally together. And depending on how many people you have that are holders, and we say that we're going to commit to burn 500,000 SHIB every day. If everybody in the community were to burn 500,000 SHIB every day, you're going to get very darn close to my numbers on that 1 year. And I said, just only do it in 1 year because you only need to. You're going to get that very close. Right now, today, 500,000 SHIB is going to be less than $20. $20 off 30 months, so you're $600 in a month. Even if you did this for 1 month or 2 months, so you talk about, let's say 1 month, $600. If everybody in the community committed $600, do you understand that the vast majority probably of people in the community burn more than that, no pun intended, on things like cigarettes and weed and all this other garbage? But they're saying that they're not willing, for the benefit of the whole, for the benefit of the collective, for the benefit of everybody in this community that's supposed to be a community, that they're not willing to give of themselves and do that to contribute to positive price movement. Because here's the thing, even if you did the 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, you're at least initiating some positive price movement to hopefully get more people to buy into the project. The truth is, folks, if you don't have any positive price movement, sustained positive price movement, if you can't get above this all-time high that you're not currently at, and ideally get to the point where it drops at least one more zero, there's not an incentive for people to buy into the project because there's too many other projects spinning up, like Las Cucarachas, as I said on my other episode. And they're not going to pay attention to something like SHIB because it's not giving them what they think is going to be the right way to get some profit, some return, some let's go to the moon, deep, 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 at some point down the road. We get it. Neither option's ideal, but here's the truth, man. If you right now, you're not getting the amount of buying that you expect. We believe, in our opinion, that that's a symptom of the fact that the price is somewhat stale. And we believe that the only way to trigger something to happen is to start doing more burning, whether that's the devs doing it or it's you guys doing it. We also understand the whole Shibarium and the claims of Shibarium's going to solve it. They said that over a year ago, that Shibarium was going to be the solution because SHIB was going to be the gas token. If SHIB's not the gas token, there's no logical reason to hold the darn thing because everybody's going to be leaping over the bone. We believe that everybody leaping over the bone could be robbing Peter to pay Paul because you could have people that sell their SHIB to buy bone. We believe that the theory of the devs was, no, everybody will just join on Shiba Swap and they'll buy their SHIB and then they'll stake their SHIB and then they'll earn bone. The problem with that is that the amount of bone you earn is garbage compared to how much SHIB you have to hold in order to actually get any good return. Same with leash. You'd have to hold like thousands of SHIB in order to make it make sense on the bone and the leash returns, and nobody's going to do that. Also, Shiba Swap is a garbage interface. I understand they launched the NFTs. As we said on other episodes, we believe NFTs are too heavily saturated. It's not going to solve the problem either. So we see the devs are doing other strategic things to try to initiate people to contribute and buy into the project. And it's still somewhat of a community organic aspect because although they're doing marketing endeavors, it's still around SHIB being a known popular thing. We just simply feel there are a lot of other tokens that are spinning up that have tokenomics that are attractive to casual investors, people outside of the crypto bubble. And people are going to those that less people are caring about utility, which is unfortunate, but it's the truth. But also, more importantly, Shiba Swap sucks. Let's be honest, Frank, it sucks. The amount that you get sucks. If I look at something, anything, this is Libro's one, Thorium's one, Everrise is another. There are tons where you can simply invest 100 and you get way more in return than what Shiba Swap does. Also, SHIB has been harmed by gas. Gas is less of an issue now, but because Shiba Swap sucks, you're not getting enough return to make it worth your while. And multiple people have called this out. It's like, it's not worth it because we're not getting what we expect to get for the amount that we have to buy and hold into this. So they were hoping Shibarium would allow them to basically use it as the gas that gets rid of the Ethereum concern. They were hoping that that would simplify the Shiba Swap. They were hoping that the SHIB that they hold and own would have supported what they wanted to get in terms of the bone and the leash and then be enriched. Instead, the design has always ever only been, let's just build something that's going to initially the Ryoshi vision, which you don't get anymore. And they were lying about how frequent that would happen. So that was a big cluster. I don't want to cuss. That was an issue. Then you got the bone. You don't get as much bone. You could stake your bone right now in an exchange. You're going to get way more than what Shiba Swap does. That shouldn't happen here, folks. Then they're talking about these other pairs that nobody cares about. I understand why the devs are doing what they're doing. From my theory, they're doing it because they believe that the utility has to be there, bar none, regardless of everything else. I'm simply saying that if you don't have burns, your SHIB's not going to be worth strong value in the near term future. That's all I'm saying. So if you're the kind of person that really believes in SHIB and you believe in the community and the ecosystem, to the point that you'll trust the devs no matter what. And they don't strike me as a cult, although there are some tendencies in the Discord, but I digress. If you believe in it that strong and you're just going to hold your SHIB until the wheels fall off, that's cool. I support you. I respect you. I'm not telling you to sell your SHIB. That's the last thing I'm saying. I'm saying that I believe that the community could of their own say, you know what, we're not accepting what we're being told by the devs and we're going to take it in our own hands and we're going to go ahead and we're going to do this burn and we'll agree that $600 isn't that much to ask just to get some positive price movement, at least right now. Long term, it's not going to sustain without the devs getting involved because, again, my theory is you're not going to have enough of the holders to do the 1 trillion per day. There's not enough people holding right now to do the 1 trillion a day. We know this to be the case. So I just think you do something to kind of kickstart a thing, start the fire at least a little bit. At some point, though, we have to have people buying, and that rate has to be aggressive, and I don't think it's going to be. Or you have to have the devs saying, you know what, we understand, we hear you. It's not what we tried, it's not going to work. We got to change gears and get SHIB to be the gas token for Shibarium, exchanges be damned, or whatever they got to do, because they be listening to the community. Because right now they're not listening to you. Some of you believe in their vision. That's cool. I'm saying that ultimately, as an investor, you expect a return. That return isn't there. And I don't foresee it in the short term, near term future, unless you have way more aggressive burns than you have. And that has to come from either the devs or from the community. I say the community should just step in and do that. That's just how I feel about it.